welcome back to the channel. For today's video, we are taking a look at everything that I watched in the month of March, and this is the third video in kind of my recapping a movie a day series for 2024. If you haven't seen January or February's, if you want to go back and see what movies I watched in those months, you can, or I'll put the link to the list, my list on Letterboxd, in the description of this video. But just kind of a quick little recap. This is something that I've done for the past 2 years in 2022 and then 2023, where I was able to watch a movie every single day. And so I'm doing this again for a third year, seeing if I can do it 3 years in a row, and then just kind of documenting my journey along the way here through this. And as always, we're going to document this journey on the Tiermaker website. And as you can see here, we've just got the Letterboxd ratings on the left-hand side here, and then each of the movies in the order that I watched them are going to be down below. So without further ado, we'll pull up each movie, talk about them briefly, and then assign them to where I rated them on Letterboxd. This month, you're going to notice there's two things you're going to notice. Is one, that there's going to be a lot of really good movies on this list. This is probably, so far out of the three, this is going to be like, if I broke down the average movie, the ranking, this one's going to have the highest average. A lot of great movies I watched this month. The second thing you're going to notice on this list, if you're paying attention, I wouldn't even have to say that close of attention. If you're paying any sort of attention, you're going to notice a trend that's happening this month, and you're going to notice, probably be able to piece it together and decipher what my next video is going to be. So anyway, let's get started with Napoleon. Was the first movie I watched of the month. You'll see at the beginning of the month here is kind of finishing up the Oscar season. So I was watching Napoleon. It's okay. I'll give Napoleon 2.5. It's one of the more, I mean, it's definitely one of the longest, but one of the more forgettable, I would say, of a lot of the films that were nominated for Oscars this year. The next film, just instantly starting off with some heat, is Past Lives. This is going all the way up to a 5-star. My favorite movie of last year, and absolutely love it. So Past Lives going all the way up to 5-star. Next up, we have the original Dune, I think from 1985, 84 maybe. It wasn't as bad as I was thinking it was going to be when I watched it, just from based on what I've heard people talk about it. But it's still not great. But I was expecting it to be completely incoherent and like not even a movie, and it was okay for what it is. But again, yeah, it's not great. So I'm putting that at 2-star. Up next, we've got Dune from 2021, I believe. This is a 4-star for me. It's kind of, was obviously last year was really popular, the part ones, and kind of leaving on these cliffhangers. This was kind of a couple years before, obviously, the trend, but this one was one of the most, I don't want to say egregious, but it really does just cut off right in the middle of the story and kind of just leaves you there. And so, for me, I can't really go much higher than a 4, just because it really doesn't feel like this whole complete story, but it's still beautiful. It's breathtaking. And I love it. And now that we have Dune Part 2, you can watch them back to back and you can get that full, complete story. And so I love Dune Part 2 just a little bit more. I'm going to put that at like a 4.5. Then we've got Anatomy of a Fall, which won for best original screenplay, right, at the Oscars. I I love Anatomy of a Fall. I loved it on the first watch. I loved it even more on a second watch. This is one where if you've only seen it once, I recommend checking it out again. You're gonna love it, I think, a lot more on a second watch. So I'm going 4.5 for Anatomy of a Fall. And then we've got Poor Things, which was kind of the big surprise, I would say, on Oscar during the Oscar ceremony. It was the film that, like, I think people people knew it was good, right? People liked the film, but I think people were only predicting it from one, maybe two Oscars. I know a lot of people were predicting, not a lot, but some people were predicting it to get goose egged, and so for me personally, I think I was predicting it in just one category. But it was the runner up in like so many categories that I was like, maybe there's a potential, and that's exactly what ended up happening with Poor Things at the Oscars. Was it ended up winning a lot of the categories that we were like putting it in the runner up status in. The next film, so I'm going to 4-star for Poor Things. And then the next one is Io Capitano, which was nominated for Best International Film. And so this one, I was thinking that I wasn't going to get to see it before the Oscars, but then it was like the Friday, like 2 days before the Oscar ceremony. It had a very limited release in theaters near me, so I was able to go see it. And it is pretty good. I don't think it quite connected with me or like emotionally hit me harder than I think that it might for some people. Some people like might really love that film. For me, I'm going to go about a 3.5. It is a good film, and it's something that I think maybe in a couple years I would be open to revisiting it again someday. And then we've got Oppenheimer, Best Picture winner. On a second rewatch, I bumped it all the way up to a 5 star. I had it at a 4.5, so it's not like it took a massive leap, but I did bump it up a little bit to a 5 star there. And then we've got Birdman. Okay, so right here, so you'll notice here, typically kind of how I do it every year, is so Oppenheimer. I watched that the night before the Oscars. That's usually I the night before I try and whichever film I think is gonna win Best Picture is kind of like what I watched last. So that's why Oppenheimer goes there. And then on Oscar morning, what I've started to do, I guess last year was the first year I did it, so this is 2 years in a row now, where I go back and on Oscar morning I just go back and watch the most recent Best Picture winner that I haven't seen. So last year was Spotlight. This year was Birdman or The Unexpected Virtue of Ignorance. This is kind of this area, kind of the mid-teens and then earlier. I wasn't really, I was a little younger. I guess at this point with Birdman I would have been like 18, 19, something like that. But so I was old enough that I could have seen it. I wasn't really big into movies at the time. So we're gonna start seeing it's from here, Birdman back. I don't even know what. It's just pretty much every single year I haven't seen whatever the Best Picture winner is. So decided to watch Birdman Oscar morning, and I loved it. It was a great film. I was really kind of into. I loved just the script, and then just obviously I think one shot, the one take gimmick maybe doesn't really work for everyone. For me, I thought it created kind of a really fun kind of set and like a fun environment for the film, and so I really did. I enjoyed Birdman a whole lot. Next up, we have Inception, and Inception is going all the way up to a 5 star for me. Believe Inception was, I guess it was the second Christopher Nolan film that I'd seen, that I saw. Memento would have been the first, but Inception was the first that I saw in theaters, and so it really just kind of stands out as very memorable for that reason for me. Then we've got Madam Web. This is maybe I'm forgetting something, but I think this is going to be the lowest film of the month for me. We're putting Madam Web at a 1.5. Not great, and there's plenty of videos on YouTube of people kind of tearing into Madam Web and really kind of going at it. So I'm not much I can add to the discussion, but yeah, it just wasn't great. Then we've got Drive Away Dolls. This is gonna go probably 2.5 for me. It was okay. It was a fun time, but it just wasn't as good as I was expecting it to be, just because of what I had heard about the Coen brothers' names. I hadn't actually, once I was watching Drive Away Dolls, I actually hadn't really seen any other Coen brothers films. So after I watched Drive Away Dolls, I guess I'd seen one Joel, one Ethan Coen, but no joint brother productions. So I decided to, after that, to go watch No Country for Old Men for the first time. And I'm not going to say too much about it because I did make a video on it. So there is the last video I made on this channel is kind of a becoming a better cinephile episode of No Country for Old Men. So that is going all the way up to a 5 star. And then if you want to hear more thoughts on that, I do have a full video on my channel for No Country for Old Men. And then after No Country for Old Men, I also watched Burn After Reading because I was thinking, with Drive Away Dolls kind of being more comedic, I thought maybe I should watch a Coen Brothers film that's a little bit more comedic. So ended up going with Burn After Reading, and I liked it. It is for me, I'm a sucker for movies with good endings. Any movie that nails the ending and just completely leaves you thinking about either the final shot or the final scene. It just completely hooks you. I love a good ending, and Burn After Reading is one of those where I think for some people maybe this is one of the worst endings like a movie because the way that it ends. For me, maybe it wasn't the ending I was hoping for, but it was so memorable in the sense that I still enjoyed it, and I think that it kind of sold me on what the comedy of the film was. So I did like Burn After Reading. And then we have Tenet, which is an interesting film. When I saw this the first time in theaters, it was a 3. And I was one of the many people that, were kind of bashing the sound mixing and the sound editing of the film, where it was just so hard to the biggest, it's still, to me, it's still the scene on the, like, the, not the jet skis, but that motorboat that they're on. Like, you cannot hear it without, like, having subtitles on. So the first time I watched Tenet, it was a 3. Then I watched it like a year later, on just, at home, and I bumped it up to a 3.5 on that watch, and I really was starting to like it a little bit more. And then it had been a couple years. I rewatched it, obviously, this month. I'm bumping it up to a 4. And so it's interesting that it's one of those films that I think with, like, each additional watch, it's just getting bumped higher and higher up my rankings, or like the ratings. I don't know if it's going to get much higher than a 4, if on additional rewatches, if I just continue this trend of always giving it an extra half star each time. But I think it's one of those films that the more you watch it, the more you understand, I think, a little bit about the film, but the more you just also just accept, I guess, what a lot of the film is. You don't maybe necessarily understand it any better, but you're just, like, kind of accepting everything that's happening a lot more. If that makes sense. It all just comes together a lot better, I think, on additional rewatches. And so the flaws that you have with it on the first watch, I think, kind of start going away, because you're just kind of more invested in what the feeling that Christopher Nolan is trying to get you to go through, get you into this film. And so I'm slowly, each additional rewatch, Tenet is getting better each time. Up next is Ricky Stenicki. I believe this was Amazon Prime, I think, is where this came out. I'm going to put this, it's going to be the first in the 3-star category. It was better than, like, especially, like, straight to streaming comedies, I think, are very risky, where it can be, like, awful, or it can be surprisingly decent. This, I think, kind of falls in between the two. Like, it's not, like, really good. It's, for example, if I think of just, like, a straight to streaming comedy, I think of, like, Palm Springs from a couple years ago, where that just, like, blew me away by how amazing it was. And then obviously you've just got a ton of just, like, Netflix comedies, things that just kind of get dumped there that are just completely forgettable. Ricky Stenicki was enjoyable. It didn't quite reach the heights of, like a Palm Springs or something that was really amazing, but it was still definitely better than a lot of kind of the straight to streaming comedy stuff that comes out. So I feel like a 3-star fits, what I'm describing here. The next film is The Good, the Bad, and the Ugly. Now, this is another film that I'm not going to discuss too much, say a whole lot about, other than that it is, I guess, 2 videos ago on my channel. It was the first episode of my Becoming a Better Cinephile series that I did. So if you want to hear my more thoughts on The Good, the Bad, and the Ugly, there is a whole video on my channel, and I'll put in the description as well both the links to The Good, the Bad, and the Ugly, Becoming a Better Cinephile, as well as No Country for Old Men, those videos that I made. So I'm putting The Good, the Bad, and the Ugly at a 4.5. And then we've got Argylle, from The Twisted Mind of Matthew Vaughn. I'm actually going to put this at a 3-star. I didn't hate this as much as, like, a lot of people did, and I don't know if it's just because maybe I like Matthew Vaughn's films a little bit more than some people. I guess, just to kind of, like, peek back a little bit into, like, The Kingsman. I actually hadn't. I saw the second Kingsman first. I had never. I guess, back at that, when the first Kingsman came out, I just didn't hear about it. I didn't go see it. But then when the second one came out, I had a group of friends that they were like, they loved the first one, so they're dying to go see the second. So they, dragged me along to go see the second. And so I watched that one first, and then went back to watch the original. And yeah, the original is good, but I think maybe because I watched them out of order, maybe I have a little bit more of a soft spot for the second Kingsman movie. But I love both the Kingsmen. I guess I don't love the third one, the King's Man that came out a couple years ago. That one is, a little lower on my enjoyment scale, but I like Matthew Vaughn's style a little bit more. And for Argylle, I don't know. It definitely is long, and there's a couple of the twists that I think worked. A couple of the twists don't really work, and so it's one of those where there is kind of a lot that's good, a lot that's bad, and so I think your enjoyment of the film comes from how much you can enjoy the good moments as opposed to how much the bad moments just kind of bring it down for you. So I'm going to put Argyle at like a 3 star. And then we have Damsel, Millie Bobby Brown, new film on Netflix. I think there was like a good story here. I just don't know if we got it, if that makes sense. Like, it's just the premise is interesting, and I think that there's a better concept that could have come from that premise than what we ultimately got. So I'm going to put Damsel at a 2 star. Up next is Following, which is the directorial debut for Christopher Nolan. I really dug it. It's like 70 minutes. It's barely over an hour. It goes by really fast. But I still had a great time, and it's one of those films that for me you can see in that film, you can see how Christopher Nolan, how someone watched that and then really believed in Nolan, believed that he could make something amazing, and so why he was able to get a second, get additional chances and get these budgets, and then obviously from there his career has just taken off. So I thoroughly enjoyed Following, so I'm putting that at a 4 star. Then we have Spaceman, the new Adam Sandler, Paul Dano, and um, Carrie Mulligan. Just trying to blank on her name for a second there. Film on Netflix. I'm gonna go about a 2.5. I think there were some things that worked really well for me in the film, and then there's other things that just kind of were a little more dull. And so I think it was okay, but it's another one of those where I think the film could have been a lot better if we kind of explored different things, or we kind of just told this narrative a little bit differently. It's one of those where I think that there was potential for a great film, because I believe I'm not 100% sure, but I want to say it was based off of a book, and so I'm curious to see how maybe the book kind of handles the story a little bit differently, and see if I would have liked it more maybe if the movie was more true to the book. Again, I feel like I heard that it was based on a book, or maybe it says it in the credits of the film, so I'm not 100% sure on that. Up next, we're staying in space with Interstellar. This is the second time that I've seen Interstellar. The first time I saw it, I liked it okay enough. I think I had it at like a 4 star. On the second watch, I bumped it up to a 4.5 for me. It really is, it's that good, and it's that emotional, and it's another one of those that's a little hard to follow, I think, at times, um, but ultimately, if you stick with it and if you're paying attention, like you're rewarded with just a beautiful film. So going 4.5 for Interstellar. Then we have the OG Ghostbusters, doing a little prep work. It's been a couple years since I've seen the Ghostbusters films. I actually have only seen all of them once, as I was watching them as prep for Ghostbusters Afterlife a couple years ago. So kind of doing the same thing, just a little bit of prep, for the new Ghostbusters, which I believe I'm seeing tonight. I guess tonight, as of when I'm recording this. I don't know exactly what day I'm going to post this. So a couple days ago, from when you're watching it, I saw it. I'm going to go with the original Ghostbusters as a 4 star. I feel like this is one of those where if you're kind of that time, it's a little bit more classic to you. Going back on rewatch, it is still it's a good film. I will admit that it's well made, and it is a fun, enjoyable film. But I don't know if it doesn't quite hit that level of like. I think I would love it more if I was kind of more of that, in that time period of watching it, in the, believe it's 80. I don't know what year the original Ghostbusters is, but somewhere in the 80s. I think you would enjoy it more if you're kind of that time period, but unfortunately didn't really see it until the 2020s. So gonna go 4 star for Ghostbusters. Next up is The Prestige. One of my buddies, is one of his. I think it might be their favorite Christopher Nolan film. I really dug it. I think I've seen The Prestige now 3 or 4 times, I think, at this point. And each time it's one of those where it kind of has a twist at the end, where it's kind of one of those twists where, like, if almost any other film did that twist, I would roll my eyes and I would like hate it, because like the only other it's The Prestige and Arrested Development, I think, are the two like shows and movies, like the only two that I like that pull off that twist. And obviously Arrested Development does it as like a comedic bit. In the Prestige, the twist is very it's a dramatic twist, and so I think when films try to do this twist dramatically, I usually don't like it, but the Prestige nails it the way that they're because it goes deeper than just the simple, oh, here's this twist, here's this kind of like explanation. It gives a whole lot more. The twist actually just gives you more depth to the character and to the story, and so I do really like the Prestige. So I'm going 4.5 there. Then we've got the original Roadhouse, and this is one that I think I'd heard bits about. I think like the Family Guy bit, like that's to the extent of like what I knew about the original Roadhouse. But I knew a lot of people liked it, and so when I was watching it, I was kind of I don't want to say yeah I don't want to say like disappointed. I just it's another one where for me I feel like this is maybe if you were around, like maybe if you were a teenager when this came out, or if you were just in this time period, I think you would have liked it a little bit more. For me, it just there's so much about the film that just kind of felt dated, and it just I don't know. It wasn't a great script, it wasn't a great story. But it was okay, and so I'm going with a 3 star. It's just it wasn't my favorite of like going back and watching some older films. It wasn't my favorite. And then we have the remake Jake Gyllenhaal's Roadhouse, which also was Amazon Prime. It's a little worse than the original, but it's different enough that I think that it's hard to just like base it off of, oh, it's just a remake. Like it is a remake of the character and then like kind of the general basic plot, but it's different enough that you can watch them both and have two different experiences. But I'm still just going to go 2.5 there for the new Roadhouse. And then up next we have Insomnia. This was Christopher Nolan's third film, I believe, if I've got the order right. And this is his kind of his only one that's it was based off. I guess the Batman trilogy is obviously based off of the comic, the character. But Insomnia it was based off of another film, so it's a Christopher Nolan film, but it's the one to me that feels the least like Christopher Nolan. It's okay, but I'm gonna put it at a 3 star there. And then we've got Ghostbusters 2. This one, I think I'm going to bump it up to about a 3.5. I initially, I think on Letterboxd a couple years ago, I think I had it rated at like a 3, maybe. But I enjoyed it a little bit more on a rewatch, and I had fun with it. So I'm going to go 3.5 there for Ghostbusters 2. And then we've got Batman Begins. This is another one. I think I saw Batman Begins probably for the first time. It probably would have been like 2017, 2018, something like that. It was a long time ago, and I clearly didn't love it as much on the first watch. I was shocked that I only had it rated as like it was either like a 2.5 or a 3, I think, on Letterboxd. I'm bumping it up to like a 3.5, but it's one of those like it's a 3.5 that's on the edge of like it's closer to a 4 than it is to a 3 for sure. Like I thoroughly did enjoy it. It kind of sets up the character of Batman and Bruce Wayne. It sets them up pretty well for and leads beautifully into the Dark Knight, which obviously is a different discussion of of how good the Dark Knight is. But I think I'm gonna put it at a 3.5, but it's another one of those I think for sure that in a couple years when I inevitably rewatch it, I could see it bumping up to a 4 pretty easily for me. And then the last film I watched this month or last month was Ghostbusters 2016. So again, just to kind of give you like an idea of my history, I guess, with the Ghostbuster franchise, this was the first Ghostbusters film that I'd seen. I hadn't seen the original when I saw this in theaters, and I remember thoroughly enjoying this like a lot more in the theaters, and then hearing everyone hated it. And so a lot of people like they have it down in this area, like they hate it that much. I still think it wasn't as good when I rewatched it. This is the first time I've rewatched it since seeing it in theaters. It wasn't as good as I remembered it being back then, but it still was. It's a fun, enjoyable time, a fairly harmless film. So I'm putting it as a 3 star. And that is it. That is the ranking. So let's go here and let's try and make this a little bit bigger. Does this, if I go one more, does it? Oh, perfect. We'll go right there. So make this screen a little bit bigger, and then we're going to go and rank inside the columns. This is always the hardest part for me because it's so hard to like. It's easy to place one film, I think, to assign it like a letter grade for me or a numerical grade, but then having to just rank them against other films in the same category is always tough. But we're going to go with Madame Web 1.5 by itself, and then I think I like Damsel better than the original Dune, so we'll go like that. Then the 2.5s, um, probably, oh man, probably this. I would go Drive Away Dolls, Spaceman, Napoleon, and then Roadhouse, the new Roadhouse. It's probably how I do it. The 3 stars, let's go with this maybe. We'll go with Roadhouse, and or I guess if we're going this way, Insomnia is the best of the 3 stars. Then Riggy Stenicki, Argyle, Ghostbusters 2016, and then the Roadhouse original. 3.5s. We're definitely going with Batman Begins up front. Well, let me move it that way. Batman Begins up front, and then probably Ghostbusters 2, and then Io Capitano. I think I like that. For the 4 stars, I didn't. This is tough. I didn't think too hard about this. Okay, so the OG Ghostbusters probably comes up like here. Honestly, maybe goes all the way to the front, and then Dune. Poor thing. Maybe this is the order. Ghostbusters, Dune, Poor Things, Burn After Reading, Following, and then Tenet. Yeah, I think I like that. I think I'll stick with that. Then we got the 4.5s. Oh man, this is tough. I think Interstellar, then Dune, Anatomy of a Fall, Birdman, Good, the Bad, and the Ugly. Good, the Bad, and the Ugly maybe goes there. Birdman, Prestige, I think maybe is the ranking. Interstellar, Dune, um, Anatomy of a Fall, The Good, the Bad, and the Ugly, Birdman, and then Prestige. Okay, I think I like that. And then the 5 stars up top, I'm gonna go with maybe like this. Yeah, I think I like that. I think I like Inception, Past Lives, No Country for Old Men, and then Oppenheimer. So that's it. That's right there. That's my ranking for every film that I watched in the month of March. Again, this is the third month that I've done this. I'm still just doing the tier. I'm probably gonna end up. I know I was like gonna flirt around with a couple different styles of doing this, but I think I'm just gonna stick with just doing them all on Tier Maker. It's makes it pretty easy, and it's easy to display, easy to kind of put a bunch of films on here. I think this is the easiest way of doing this. This is probably what I'm going to keep doing, is just this tier maker rankings. But yeah, so I've done this for obviously January and February. We're on to March, and I'm hopefully, as long as I can keep it up of watching a movie every single day throughout the rest of the year, this is how we're going to continue documenting that journey. And then again, yeah, just let me know in the comments down below which of these films you've seen, if there's any of these films that you rank higher or lower than me. I'm sure, again, movies are subjective, and so I'm sure there's a lot of these films that you maybe view differently than I do. And then there's a lot of films that I'm gonna feel differently about these in a couple years when I rewatch them than I do right now. So it's I'm very fluid with my rankings and my ratings of films. So yeah, just let me know if there's any of these films that you really like down below. And then again, if you're paying attention to this film, I'm sure you noticed there was a kind of a theme going on with a good chunk of these movies. And so that's a little tease for you for what next week's video is going to be on the channel. So until that video, thank you for watching and have a great day.